Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Coffee Talk with Liquid Shane 1973. I'm your host, as the little lady in the beginning said, Shane Lakita. And we're here on an audio format, as you can hear me, but we're also live streaming again with another interview. I told you, I promised you guys I'd start bringing some interviews with people that inspire me, that get me moving, that get me in the right direction. And one of those guys is with me today in Dave. Dave Conrey, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Everybody checking in. How are you?
Real quick. Dave is a graphic designer, illustrator, artist, kind of all put all into one big kit and caboodle. And, I love the stuff that he does. So we're going to get into some of his work. We're going to get into some of his background, his story, a little bit of his message that he likes to bring to the table. And we'll get right all into that. You ready to go, Dave?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, man. All right. So if you guys are looking at the audio, the visual side of it, right over on YouTube and on my Liquid Channel page, you'll see our hats. See these hats right here? The Doing Work and then the EFFECT. This is a recent hat that Dave made for me. And then that's the one that he did over there for custom hats that he does. It kind of gives you a little bit of a feel of what he does and his style and the things that he does with his artwork. So Dave, let's get right into that, okay? Because one of the things that drew me to you right in the beginning, it was over on the TikTok app, and I met you through some of your lives that were there, and I just kind of caught wind of the things that you were doing. Tell us a little bit about your history of art for you, man. So where it kind of came from and to where you're at now. It might be a long story, but that's okay. We can get right into it.
I mean, it goes way back to when I was a kid, but it's always been kind of fits and starts creatively.
Yeah.
I would dabble for a little bit as a young kid and then pull away from it. And then I got back into it a little bit as a teen and then pulled away. And then I went to initially into college and I was taking some art classes. And then I was just kind of misdirected by stuff and kind of aimless for a long time until mid to late 20s.
Okay.
I just started realizing that you would go to the bookstore, like Barnes and Noble, or back then it was like Tower Records, would have a big book magazine selection. Go to the magazine selection, and I noticed that I would just kind of gravitate towards these art and design oriented magazines, and so it was like airbrush magazines and design related.
Yeah, I was going to say,
magazines.
what kind of art were you interested back then? Like, what did comic books, or was it graphic art, or like?
I would say it was definitely more graphic and illustrative in nature to begin with. I mean, I was really into motorcycles. And so one of the things about motorcycles I always thought I wanted to do was paint motorcycles, right? Or paint, stuff like that, helmets and whatnot.
Oh, nice.
But, it's just like, it was kind of like one of those things like that. It's like, it sounds really interesting, but then I didn't really have a ton of passion for that.
Right.
And so I didn't really pursue it too far, but I liked looking at it. I enjoyed seeing other people do it and whatnot. But the design aspect of things really kind of got my attention. And I wasn't exactly sure what that meant at the time. I was going to school for marketing. I knew what marketing was, but I didn't really truly understand what it meant to be a graphic designer. So I was just going to school, doing my thing for marketing. And then I was working for a marketing company and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. And it was because it was like direct marketing and it was very, I don't know, there's a lot of time on the phone asking questions of people and nothing creative.
Was it like a super, super aggressive sales environment kind of
thing? No, it
or?
wasn't so much that. It was more like we were collecting data a lot of times, like you get like a little mailer in a magazine or whatever, and people fill that out. We would kind of take that information in, like somebody wanted a piece of software. We did the marketing for that software company so that they could get the leads, so to speak.
Okay, gotcha.
And so it just was like, it was dull, it was dry, and it wasn't creative at all. So I bounced out of there and I went and became a bartender for years, and then which was a lot more fun. I was making more money.
Oh yeah, man, me too.
But I still needed that creative, release, and I wasn't sure what it was. So I went back to school, but I started taking more art classes again. I went back and took like the, figure drawing 101 and,
Oh, like I didn't know that. Nice.
Still life and all that. Went back and did all that. And as I was doing that and having these conversations with other artists and whatnot, I was talking with one person who's like, oh yeah, like you really, we were talking about our interests, and he said, oh, you want to be a graphic designer? I was like, I didn't know what that meant. So he kind of shared with me some of the courses that I could have taken there, and I did that. And then I went and did some other external courses at other colleges and whatnot.
Mhm.
So I just, finally ended up like, this is what I love. Like I really enjoyed, building things with graphic design, whether
Yeah.
it was magazines and ads and things like that I did for the longest time. Worked for a magazine publishing company for many, many years, but which was a great job. It was a really great job for the period that I was there. In retrospect, it was so lax and easy to work in, and when you're in the job, it's like you can't really appreciate it for what it is. But in retrospect, now it was like a really great job. But
hindsight's always 20/20 sometimes, but
right,
yeah.
But magazines being the nature of they are, it's like like having to push things out monthly. There was a lot of production oriented stuff. There was creative opportunities, but for the most part, because it was either a feast or famine situation. Either I was doing nothing because there was no work to be done yet, or the editors would dump a bunch of stuff on my plate 2 weeks before we had to have the magazine out. So it was like just going. And so I didn't really, again, not as much creative outlet, not as much creative control as I wanted. And so that's when I got back into painting canvases. And that was probably 2006.
Oh wow! So that's a good chunk of time ago. It's 14 years.
Yeah. And so, but again, it was like one of these things where I was just doing it at that point as a creative release, right? Just to keep the chops up, so to speak. And what year was it? I was in that job for another 7 or 8 more years after that, and then they sold off our entire contingent to a different company. But they didn't take any of the, they didn't take any of the art directors. They didn't take any of the, some of the lower level editors, the managing editors, the copy editors and all that. They didn't take some of the support staff. They only took like the main editors, and they took the salespeople, people that make the money and that make the content. Right. So I got a big severance package and I got let go, but it was the best thing I wanted at the time because I was so ready to do something different. And so that was basically the beginning of where I am at now. It's also gone through kind of like these micro generations unto itself, but that kind of started me on this path.
So when so that's great to be able to see exactly where you're at now. So, and during your whole entire journey, here you are, you've been in marketing, you went back to school to be able to look at different figurative drawing and stuff like that or whatever. I love that because I think even though you were into art before, you went back to be able to try to refocus that or maybe hone your skills or whatever. And there's art in your family too, right? So your mom's a painter, an artist, right? And stuff like that. Does that run in the family a little bit more? Just out of curiosity, did you learn that skill set from the family?
I mean, she was always creative too, but she was the exact same way. She was always fits and starts with her work as well. And I think it wasn't until I really started focusing my energy on art again that kind of inspired her to get back to it.
Wow. Yeah, that's cool.
Because she was doing other things. She's also a designer. She's an interior designer. So works in a creative field as well. But I think she had kind of put her art aspects on hold a little bit so she could focus on that, focus on her family life and whatnot. And now our situations are both different. And so now we're both kind of, pushing, all 8 cylinders into this area right now. So.
Yeah, no, so it's interesting because I'm all over the place, even in my journey, right? So I've gone from military. I was in the Navy for 11 years. I got out of the Navy. I was a bartender. Then I went and worked in floor sales. Then I went and worked in outbound credit card sales. Then I went to work for cell phone companies. And then when I went all these different things, like this whole hodgepodge of stuff. One consistent for me always has been I needed a creative outlet of some sort. And so it's similar to your story. When I was a little bit younger, actually, it was right after I got out of the Navy. We moved to Savannah, Georgia, my wife and I. And we just threw a dart at the board and said, let's go down there. I'm going to start a business. And we're like, all right, let's go. It was just the two of us, no kids, no nothing. So we got in a car and just took off went down there, got in a little trailer and carried our stuff. But I painted cars. So I did small car paint work, nothing detailed, but more around repair work, right? So had a little trailer, had my paints, matched up the colors, did all that good stuff. But that was my release for creativity. And I'm always talking about the fact of if you could find something for yourself that you can channel that energy, that maybe even sometimes negative energy, positive energy or whatever, through something to be able to give yourself an outlet. I always feel that that's so important. And it's always been common with me. And it sounds similar to where you're at. You've always kind of needed that in your journey. Am I pretty spot on with that?
Yeah, pretty much. And I apologize if people are. I muted my microphone there for a second because I live in a flight path, and so there's quite often a lot of helicopters going over. So if people hear that noise in the background, that's what's happening. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, that's essentially it. You know, to a point where it's like I finally got the message. Like, it finally got knocked in my head enough times to say, like, this is what you enjoy. And really, if I can go a little bit deeper on this, is like,
yeah, please do.
It's not just the art, right? It's for me, and this is something we've actually talked about before privately, is that the art is fun. The art is a blast. I love that I get to be an artist and a designer for a living. That's great. But what really kind of drives me and what inspires me to keep pushing forward and what inspires me to make these things is because when I do and I share them, whether it's on TikTok or on Instagram or on YouTube or wherever, when I share them, other people get inspired to do the same thing. Right? Other people have told me numerous times. You were one of them. Our friend TG on TikTok. Another friend. A bunch of other friends have told me recently, in the last couple of years, that they do what they do because I kind of, not that I gave them permission, but I showed them that it's not as scary as they think it is.
Right.
And I think that, that right there is why I do what I do. So I make the art because I love making the art, but I probably wouldn't be as emphatic about it if I didn't also get the feedback from people saying that I've helped them do their creative thing, whatever that is. Yeah. Even if it's just to express a little creativity, not necessarily to do anything necessarily entrepreneurial, right? They just wanted to get out and do some work because they said they've always wanted to, and they never did before until I kind of said it would be okay.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. It's almost like you've given it's okay to take risks and chances to do that kind of stuff, to be honest with you. Put yourself out there. I even see you on your lives when people come in and say, I've always been creative, or I always done this. I'm not really sure if I want to. And the advice always given, like you gave to me too, is just do it. Like, literally put a pen to paper, put a paintbrush onto the board, do whatever you have to do. Just do it. Nobody's going to be ridiculing you for it, right? Even though it's your own internal mechanisms that you're looking at yourself going, I'm my own worst critic. It's not perfect. It's all this different stuff. But I love it because that's the message that I always get from you all the time. Even if I think the other night you were putting together like a horse and some unicorn and stuff like that. And I mentioned, hey man, you know what I'm seeing in my head? I'm seeing a unicorn and a Terminator in the world of like robotic or whatever. And you said, do it, man. Just do it. That sounds awesome. Go and do it.
Right. Do it.
So, it's interesting because from your concept, what I love about that is this. It's the same thing with my podcast. Okay. So I started the podcast a long time ago, me and a microphone, just having a journey, a little, just journaling out my path or whatever. And what's funny is that throughout time, I get people that will now say to me, I needed that motivation. I needed that positivity. I needed that push in the right direction, whether it was working out or going back to school or whatever it is. And so that's a driver for me, much like I think where you're at, where if you have somebody say to you, hey, Dave, I love your work and you inspired me to go and do this. It's the same concept where it just, even if you're starting to feel a little flat, right? You start to feel a little bit down. All right, well, I'm good with it. I'll stick with what I got to stick to. And then you get that comment from somebody that just kind of brings you right up here and you're like, okay, that's my drive. I need to keep moving that forward. I think that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the past, I used to be more aggressive with the messages, right? I used to be more like, why aren't you doing something more with this, right? Like really kind of aggressive. And really, what I've just come to realize about it is that people are going to come to these things in their own time, in their own energy. And maybe they will, maybe they won't, right? And I'm not going to fault, just like I said, I'm not going to fault anybody if they don't do it. And if they do something, cool. It doesn't matter if it was, just scribbles on a page. I mean, how many times have I shared with you the ridiculous scribbles? I'm not a great illustrator, but I have no problem sharing my ridiculous process to people because it's like, look, it's this idea of like, it doesn't matter if it's good or not. It just matters that you do what makes you feel good and you stop making excuses about it, and say like, well, I can't be creative like you. I mean, the one thing that irritates me the most is when people say,
I hear that. Yeah.
I wish I was creative like you. It's like, you can be. but like anything else, you know, it's a muscle. You have to train it in order
Right.
to get there, right? So
Yeah, I think that's the other thing that I'm learning. So I know that I met you through TikTok more specifically, and we'll talk a little bit more about social media and stuff like that. But what's interesting is that I look at TikTok and I find myself as I'm rolling through some of the people that I follow and some of the people that I'm like in tune with are a lot of artists, right? And a lot of artists using that creativity. And the one theme that I hear from every one of them, the ones that are really like amazing artwork and illustrators and craziness, all the way down to your raw basic stick figures to the point, are all say the same thing. If you practice, you continue, you stay consistent, you keep putting your stuff out there. If it's video formats or just drawing or sketching or whatever, you'll get better and better as you go anyway, because with practice, like anything, like you said, it's a muscle. You'll just keep moving it forward. So I've been taking that to heart with everything, right? Whether it's through posts that we put out through videos or podcasts or art or anything like that. So that's one big thing I've been learning from anybody that's creative like that. You got to stay consistent and keep on working at it, you know?
yeah, 100%. I mean, it goes to anything really, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've had this exact same message with just posting up on TikTok. You want success on TikTok, you just have to be consistent, follow your, you know, particular idea, and don't be, you know, flighty with it. You know, go over here and do this thing and then do that thing and then do this thing and then expect the world to come running to you. You know, just focus on that thing.
Well,
There's actually,
and here's another thing. You see the comment right below here from Girl Upcycled Studio. She says, I think people believe the lie that you can't really make a living creating art. And here's the funny thing about that. I know it's a tough business, just like music and everything else, if you really want to be able to move forward. But consistency, having faith in the fact that you got to be able to be patient. That's another thing I hear from people. If you're patient with it, you never know what's going to happen. You never know who you're going to inspire. You may get some things on Instagram or some other social media platforms that you don't really get any kind of movement. You've told me this before. On TikTok, people are all about the hats and the cans, but over on Instagram, they may not be as in tune with that. The following is like, I love that. I mean, is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, and it's just one of those things that I try not to put too much energy into worried about what these people are going to think in one place or another. I'm just mostly just going, number one, I mean, we were talking just the other day. Our friend TG was asking like about my preference on the different platforms. And right now I'm leaning into YouTube and in TikTok because, well, the funny thing is I'm leaning into TikTok and it's driving a lot more traffic towards my YouTube. It's driving a lot more traffic to my Instagram. Right. It's slower pace, but you know, so the TikTok is working for me. And so I'm getting a lot more feedback from the people on TikTok. And so you know, obviously I'm going to satisfy that little itch, right? Because there's people there, you know, like it's something I want to do. Like that hat you're wearing or the can that I might have made for somebody it might be inspired by something you've shared with me, right? Mm-hmm. That you said you wanted a microphone on there, right? And but you didn't say you wanted a rap lyric on there. Right. I extrapolated out, but based on some of the conversations we have, right? Yeah. And it's something I also resonate with myself. Yeah. Right. And so it's like marrying these two things, trying to find that balance between what I know satisfies the people who are watching, but it also satisfies me as an artist, right? And then, you know, like I'm being okay with this idea that it doesn't have to exist on a canvas like that, right? Right. It doesn't have to contain itself within those four parameters. It can be on something like a hat or a skateboard, you know, like I'm throwing all my materials all the way around the studio right now just so you can see everything I do. But, you know, like, I mean, the whole can thing was a fluke. Yeah. Painting on cans.
Tell me more about that. I was going to ask you that. How did that creation begin with the cans?
So I was on YouTube and I was just watching other artists do stuff, you know, just like idly watching. And this one artist that I appreciate, his name goes by 1000, and he was based in Seattle, but I think he was moving Midwest somewhere. But I think on YouTube it's like 1000. But then if you go look at 1000 on YouTube, he's got a very kind of street art style. Yep. To his art, and he had done a couple of these cans before, and then he got a project where he was going to do like 90 of these cans all in one thing, and I'd never seen that before. I had all these cans that I was using on my canvas art, but I would just, when I was finished, I'd just throw them away. I was like,
Right.
that's actually genius, because it's
Yeah.
like, I'm using it. It's like, it becomes very meta, right? It's like this, I'm using the can as a piece of art because I've used the can for a piece of art, right?
I
And
love
it's
it.
like this, so it's like this thing. It's like people just go, "Wow!" It's just like, and some people
It
don't
is.
know what to think
It
about it, right?
literally is. I went, whoa, wait a second. What is that? That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love it, man.
yeah. I'm watching people here in the chat. I'm watching all of these comments, and I appreciate everybody popping in. A lot of people here
Oh
are
yeah,
people
man.
I know, and we know together. So thank you everybody for the comments. But
Yeah, I so the just to touch on the cans a little bit more. So I know that for me, it was if anybody doesn't know, like he was just sharing, it's a really ingenious idea. I thought was just something that, and maybe that's why it resonates with a certain demographic or a certain 15-second or 60-second really quick snapshot, and then you incorporate it in with your lives, where you only get a short amount of time to grab someone's attention on some of these platforms, right? And so here's where it's at. You got the can, you put it out there, and then all it's got to take is 1 second for somebody to go, "What is that? Wait a second, I've never seen
yeah,
that." And then they just get pulled right in, and then they can see exactly where it's at. So I love that's what did it for me. Is I saw the can. I can't remember exactly which one it was, but then I just popped into a live and said, "I got to see what this guy's doing." And then the concept of you're recycling a can that you use to paint with a can, like you just said, was just like, you're right. It just blew my mind. I was floored by the whole entire thing.
yeah.
Let's
You
see.
know, and it might, I mean, I don't know how many cans I'll end up doing in my lifetime. I've still
Right.
got a bunch over there, but like, I mean, I was doing cans upon cans upon cans, and then somebody asked me to do the hat, right? I mean, our friend Ray
Yeah.
says, "Hey, if you make a hat, I'm going to buy a hat." So I was like, "All right, okay, I'm gonna hold him to it, right?" So I put up an order form for him to buy a custom hat, and he bought it just like that. And so it was just like, okay, well, I'm committed. I'm pot committed now. And then
Yeah.
then somebody else bought another one. Then somebody else bought another one. Next thing you know, I've got like 6 orders for hats. I'm like, oh crap, I'm gonna have to back off because I don't have. I've got. It's gonna take me 6 months to finish all these hat orders, But
Well, plus
no,
your process, you're not in the place where you're just fabricating a bunch of hats everywhere. Each one of them has its own message, its own heartfelt, kind of like where you're at with. You could see, even with the fact of the message that you might put on there on the bottom of this hat, you can't see it, but he wrote a long lyric from the song right on the back end here, along with the main feeling of where it's at with it. So that alone in itself, when I saw that, I opened it up and I went, "Oh man, that has so much more meaning behind it," because you can't see it from face value right here, but I
yeah,
see the value behind that, and that's coming from you, which is pretty awesome. And I think that there's a connection that people have with you. Sometimes I've heard it many times on your live and other artist types of lives, that they're very interactive with their people, right? They try to be anyway, right? If the people are flowing in the lives and you're there, you're very interactive. Do you purposely do that a little bit differently, or is it just kind of the flow of how you're at? Like, you go into it with some sort of thought process of how you want to be different in that space, or is it just kind of flow?
I mean, I think it's just who I am naturally,
Yeah.
right? I interact with people like that. If the one thing I did before I ever went live myself was I looked at other people's lives and see what other people were doing, right?
Me
Other
too.
live TikToks or live videos. And most of them, let's be honest, most of them suck, right? Most of them suck. And
Yeah.
I know, no, ill will towards the people themselves, but I just don't think that they fully understand how their lives could be improved. I don't mean their lives, but their live experience can be
Right.
improved by just being a little bit more engaged and active with their people. Now, the other side of this is that I've had lots of experience being in front of a camera because I've got 200 plus videos on YouTube under my belt.
Right.
And if you go back to my first YouTube videos, they suck, right?
Yeah. The
They're
same thing with
terrible.
my podcast. 1 through like 25 were like, what's that all about?
Yeah. And I had a podcast on my own too, and I kind of abandoned it because I just wanted to focus on some other things. But like, I've spent a lot of time on mic, a lot of time in camera, and so just kind of pulling all that experience in, and then understanding that the experience is better when you actually talk, right? The experience of even just posting and then commenting, or replying to other people's comments is so much greater, right? Because people do, like, I think especially like on Instagram, they don't expect the creator often to reply,
Right.
because it's just not the norm for some reason, which I think is completely insane and ridiculous.
Me too.
And if you've got anything less than 50,000 followers, if you're receiving anything less than 100 comments on any particular post and you're not responding to every single one, well, then you're doing a disservice to your community.
Right. I agree.
So I would rather have, 5,000, 10,000, people in my entire community that are deeply engaged than having 1 million people in my community that don't know anything about me and I don't interact with them at all.
Yeah, I think it's really crucial, especially in today's society, to be honest with you. Interaction, conversations, connecting with people, positivity, even a realism positivity. I always try to bring out the fact that I always park in the positive place, but I'm also a realist to know that, stuff happens and life happens, and how do we navigate that and stuff like that. I feel like when I'm connecting with people, it's so much more authentic. It connects so much more with people, even on on the lives that I've done 4 of them or 3 or 4 of them, and all of them, I make sure that I take the time to interact with each person individually, even if they're just coming and going. They're popping in real quick. They're just saying, hey, how you doing? And you just kind of interact with them, and just that one moment, you never know what kind of impact you might have on that person. I've had many people that say, oh, you commented back. Yeah. Okay. Hey, how you doing? Like, what's going on? And we spark up a conversation, and they're just like, I don't know what to do here, because normal people aren't responding. I'm like, wait a second, we're just
doing this. I'm triggered. I don't know.
Oh man. So, there's a couple things that I wanted to pick your brain on. One of the things that I saw.
Wait, can we pause that for 1 second? I want to call out Dave McCauley here, because I see this comment right now. And Dave, it's almost like Dave McCauley is actually the first person that ever bought a can for me. He's been a fan of mine for a long time, and I really appreciate him. But it's almost like he put this comment out there to trigger me, because he knows what I'm going to say right now.
Oh, right? Say it.
Because he says, I would love a hat, but I'm too old and stoggy to rock a flat brim. And I'm just saying, shut up.
Yeah, exactly.
I can make you a different kind of hat if you really wanted one, but don't ever try to tell me you're too old, Dave, because I'm probably older. And maybe not, but still. No excuses.
I agree 100%. I love it, man. That's awesome. Look at, flat brims, you can still wear it if you wanted to, but I know one of the people that you got a hat for, they already started to kind of form it. They were forming it downward and kind of getting a little bit of a rounded figure to it. So, hey.
When I was younger, that's what I used to do. I would take a flat brim hat, because that's the way they were made. They didn't make the ones that were already pre-curved. You had to curve them yourself. You had to go get your old coffee can and soak the lid and then dip it in the can and let it sit overnight like that. That's how you did it. So no excuses, Dave.
No excuses. I love it. All right. So here's the question that I have. Yeah. So, all right. I'm sitting there and I'm looking at a couple of your posts. So what I love about some of now remember, a lot of it's focused around TikTok. I've started to dabble a lot into the Instagram world of where you're at, kind of see that. And then YouTube, I think I was asking you about camera stuff that you're using and just different stuff, because I have never really dove into the YouTube, except another channel that I have with a buddy of mine. But okay. When you go through and you post something, like your really quick snippet, you're walking to the post office to go deliver something, you're doing something, as you're thinking, you see something in front of you. What do you try to bring across with your message mostly, Dave? If you've got a way to be able to say, my message would be to people this, what is your message? Because I can kind of hear hints of it throughout all of your messages that you bring. So tell me a little bit more about that. What's the message that you want to tell people?
If I really had to boil it down to a general idea, it really would be 2 things. One thing that I say way too often, Rob, probably. I put it on hats and I put it on mugs is, look, if you want something, you got to do the work, right? There is no easy answer, right? There's a designer that I follow by the name of James Victori, and he says, and I think I might be paraphrasing this a little bit different. Like, the thing about artwork is that you're not entitled to the art. You're only entitled to the work. And the only way to get to the art is to do the work.
Oh,
right?
I like that.
That's all you're entitled to is the work. So if you want the art, you got to do the work. But there's still never any promise that you'll find the art. But you have to do the work.
Yeah.
So that's all you're entitled to. So that's one idea. But then there's also this idea of, like, let's stop making excuses about the things that, we say we want or we don't want or we want to engage in. It's like, and find the answer, right? Stop trying to put these barriers, these barriers that are mostly placed there by the fears that you have internally,
right?
And push back against that, because that fear is big and ugly and scary as it may seem. It may seem like this daunting monster that's looming over you about, you don't get to do that thing because I'm in your way. But you push back against that even a little bit, right?
Yeah.
You push back against that fear even a little bit, and it backs off, right? And then as soon as I've used this illustration before, like, we have this comfort circle we're in. We're in this circle of things that we're comfortable with. But you take one tiny step outside your circle, and that doesn't mean your circle got that much bigger. It got exponentially bigger, right? You're bigger. Your circle's that big. You take one big step, it goes like this, right? And then it goes like this, and then it goes like this, right? And then the thing that you were comfortable, because it doesn't just push out this way or that way. It moves out. Your comfort level gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and so. Stop making excuses, put in the work, and then you'll find that as you do it, that you aren't as scared about these things as you think you are. But you got to put your energy in there. So,
dude, it's heavy stuff, but I got to tell you what, it's true. And what I love about it is it's relatable to anything. The podcast that I run over here is a lot about very similar, but it's all around, health related, really trying to work hard, doing the work that's necessary for you to get to where you need to be and not just snap a finger and hope it's going to be there, right? Those flash in the pans, they don't come around. Listen, and if they do, good for you. I'm glad you were blessed with that magic wand to tap you on your head that you get everything you need. But I'll tell you, it takes work, and you got to put the work in to get the results that you're really looking for. And that can come like you. So that's why I think the reason I asked that was because when you first started bringing some of those messages of do the work and those kind of things, I was like, I can relate to that with my own weight loss, health related, that kind of stuff, and my own professional journey. Listen, if I want to move up in the company that I'm working for, or if I want the podcast to do anything, I got to do the work. I got to put in the work. I got to practice. I got to do the things that are necessary for me to continue to keep that muscle moving and keep it moving forward. I love that. Hey, will you show that mug one more time, by the way?
There you go.
I love that. Do the work. You sell that on your merch site, don't you?
I do, on my website. You go to daveconrey.com and sell it there. I buy it.
Yes.
But I also want to clarify this, that I'm not one of these hustle porn guys, that's like hustle,
right.
I understand that there are other factors at play, right? You have family obligations, you have lifestyle obligations. The barriers to fear could be larger than just like my perception of what it is. It could be based in maybe there are psychological and emotional things at play that most people will not understand, and you may not be willing to share, and that's totally okay too. But if you're willing to put forth an effort in one direction, like I said, even the tiniest little step forward, then it should be okay. And I
love that visual, by the way. One step really expands it out more and more and more. Each one of those steps that you take to increase on that comfort zone. I'm actually writing that down.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
So that's great, man. And I love the fact that I'm neither like that as well. Like I'm like, you have to do the work. As a matter of fact, what's funny is I talk about the fact that consistency is more important to me than doing the work, really, really full bore to be able to do it. Because I feel like if you're consistent with your efforts, or you're consistent with even if it's small efforts, small steps or whatever, especially in this weight loss thing. Listen, we live a certain amount of time on this earth. We have all these ups and downs in our lives through stress eating and ups and downs and age and everything else that comes into play. We're faced with a lot of stuff. Every little step in the right direction will help you create that ripple effect towards that. So I really like that. Okay.
Yeah. But then also, I mean, conversely to that, if you do mess up, don't beat yourself up, right? Just like, okay, I messed up, back on the track.
Give yourself some grace.
Yeah. Yep. Grace is important. 100%.
I love that. All right. So, Dave, if you were to think of, and the reason I'm asking this is because I, as a guy that likes to draw little cartoons or little things like that, if you were to think of one or two artists in your repertoire of thoughts and inspirations that you can think of that are inspirations for you in the way that you draw, what you do, and those kind of things, who would those people be, so that way I can go check them out?
Oh, wow. Oh, man, there's like
There's a lot of them.
Parsing that down to one or two is really, really difficult. I would say the first one that comes to mind is probably Shepard Fairey, who is responsible for Obey Giant. Because he, like me, he started as a designer and has moved into, I mean, he still does design work, but for the most part, he's an artist, right? He's a street artist and he's a fine artist. He gets shown in galleries all over the world.
Yep.
But it's his approach to, number one, sharing the art at all cost, right? I mean, he puts himself out there in ways that most people won't. And is not worried about, like, I mean, he doesn't want to be arrested for, sharing his street art. He would rather not be arrested for going to, to go to jail for street art, but he's not going to keep him from doing it. Right.
Yeah. Yep.
And then his graphic style is very interesting to me, especially if you look at his truly developed fine art work. It's got just this dynamic, layered feel that I just love it, right? I just dig it, and it's always kind of inspired my efforts artistically to just kind of create layers upon layers upon layers, especially when it comes to canvases. Most of the canvases, it's a little bit difficult to put layers upon layers on a hat, right? But
yeah.
Right. Aside from him, who else would I have to put out there?
I know I'm putting you on the spot on that.
I know there's just so many. Like I've been just picking, so many. But oh, wow, God, I think I'm gonna go out, and I am gonna say James Victori again, and it's like victory but with an E instead of a Y.
Okay.
And he is also designer, but his design work has always come from a place of artistic expression.
Yep.
He's not the traditional designer in that respect, and he's mostly a poster artist, and so that kind of I feel that too. But it's his. You wouldn't, when you think of graphic design and you go see his work, you won't necessarily make those two connections. I mean, it's obvious that he is a designer, but you wouldn't look at him and go like, "Oh, that can be design." Right? That scribble of a fly, can be designed. That really, and actually it's funny because he did this piece for, I want to say it was like the Savannah College of Art or something like that. And it was essentially like a scribbly skull with a banner underneath it. And that piece has always inspired me to do my art, my skulls this way, because I've done skulls numerous different ways, some more detailed than others.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, I was just like, why does it have to be, like photorealistic perfect?
Right.
Why can't it be representational like this and be just as powerful? Right.
Yeah.
And so he kind of inspired that idea in me. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be slapped together. It can be so if I may, I'm dig here, like I did this thing almost kind of inspired by him at some point, probably, but if I can find it real quick. This piece here.
Oh yeah.
No more boring art. Don't mind this. This is just this was experimentation. But this was inspired by him.
Yep.
And it's just this. If you look at his work, you would see like that's not much different than what he would do.
Right.
And he would put that up on a poster, and then that gets shared in Museum of Modern Art. Right.
Wow, that's crazy.
So there is no clear definition about what can be high art.
Yeah.
So just go out and do what feels right.
Right. Oh, I love that. I love that. I know that a lot of people will say the same thing about art, that you don't understand all that much, right? So a lot of people, even like Andy Warhol back in the day, right? I know it was kind of abstract. It was called different colors, Campbell soup cans, things like that or whatever. But on the same token, if you really look at some of the work that these guys did that people didn't understand at the time, a lot of people are like, oh, wow, that's interesting. But they're so powerful in the simplicity and some of the artwork and some of you could almost feel emotion through some of it. Like as you're walking through it or looking at it, But here's the big question that I have. When you just mentioned a minute ago, and I don't want to lose sight of this, you said the difference between design and art like, are those two totally separate things? Are you saying?
So you can break them down to two different things. You can have art in design, and you can have design within art, but as separate entities, right? As separate things, right? They have different functionality, right?
Yep.
Art is meant to embrace creativity and to enhance a person's view of life, whether, like put up on the wall or to share in a public space, right? To enlighten them to creativity in a new way. Design is largely meant to communicate, right? Design is meant to change the way you look at something. Design is meant to make something easier for you to understand, whether it's graphic design, industrial design, interior design, right? It's about making your life a little bit more interesting. Now, again, there can be art within that,
right?
And there can be a lot of design. One of my favorite designers of all time is a guy by the name of David Carson, and he uses very arty ways within his design work, and it's just kind of become who he is, right? And so you expect that from him, but you understand that you are looking at design work. He also does art, just like me.
Yeah.
There's probably is, if you looked at some of his design stuff versus some of his art stuff, you might not see a clear delineation between those two, like right?
Mix. Yeah.
Right. But then, I mean, that's kind of the same way with my stuff too. Like a lot of times when you see some of my design work, it's very edgy. It's very, graphically rough and raw. And, I mean, I can do the clean stuff too, but the stuff that really inspires me is the stuff that feels more artistic in nature.
That's great. No, I'm glad you described that, because I hear you reference that sometimes when you're talking, even some of the posts where you're like, this is what I have always done with my, design piece of it. And you did a couple lives, actually, you were showing more about the design side of it rather than just the artistic side of it. So it's interesting to hear the perspective of the difference between the two, because I'm not in the know. So that's really awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Well, and design informs a lot of what I do. I mean, because I started really as a designer.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, if anybody wants to be an artist professionally, I recommend they take a design course while they're in school for that, because it creates an understanding of elements that might take your work to another level.
Yeah.
Right? Like you understand, maybe it's typography, maybe it's the spatial relationship of things, maybe it's, negative space versus, like minimalism versus maximalism and stuff like that. Like all these different things that we learn in design school, it is obviously flowed into my art and vice versa.
That's awesome. All right. So what about, so the other thing I wanted to segue into is social media. We were talking about TikTok. We talk about Instagram. And before I got into TikTok, to be honest with you, I wasn't really interested in getting on TikTok, but I had a friend of mine that knows that I do podcasts, knows I bring a really positive message to the table. And he was saying there's a need for you in a place like this, because he was on there and he was kind of dabbling in it a little bit. And he says, go there to do it. And what I found is I've met some really great people, including yourself, through TikTok, that has really enhanced my life a little bit, because I'm like, wow, I met all these really great people. What is your thoughts, or what are your thoughts on social media in general? Just in the loop in general, because there's many different types of social media. But do you find value in social media, not just with your own brand and the things you're trying to bring to the table, but holistically, like as in a value in our culture?
Yes. I mean, it. It's kind of like there's so many things about it, right? Social media can be a complete cesspool, right?
Yeah.
It can be a complete and total cesspool. It can be driven by ego and image, like a lot happens on Instagram,
right?
And this dopamine hit of getting more likes on our thing, right? More interaction, more comments. It's like, oh, I need more of that, right? We get a popular video out on TikTok, and then we go and repeat that. We try to repeat that exact same process of that video just because I need more of that, right? So those are the downsides of this, right? But the upside is that it has allowed us to communicate with people far greater than we ever have, in our lives.
Right.
And it has allowed us to reach out to individuals who we would have never met in, even if we, the interactions I have on TikTok compared to the interactions I have with people on Twitter is vastly different, right?
Yeah.
I don't have any really heartfelt connections with anybody on Twitter. I do have connections with people on Facebook, but still it's not quite the same.
Yep.
Right. So TikTok to me is a little bit different. Instagram is different because I get to interact with all these other creative people, and the visual stimuli of that makes that interesting for me. But it's what really comes down to, and I did a video about this on TikTok yesterday about we've had somebody we've both followed in the past where they've had their platform or their TikTok completely taken away from them,
right,
for whatever reason, right? It's not uncommon for people to have their TikToks just banned like that.
Right.
And then there's all this kind of like grieving about that. And I understand, and there's a lot of anger, a lot of misunderstanding about why it happened.
Yep.
But really what it comes down to is that if you're not doing your best to, number one, engage with your people so that they have this heartfelt connection to you.
Right.
And you're not encouraging them to go find you in these other places, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, wherever. And then actually, when they do go there, you interact with them as well, and kind of perpetuate this idea that you aren't just a one-trick pony.
Yep.
Then, you're going to build something greater than just the confines of this space, right? One of the lessons that I've always taken to heart was from the first guy I ever did I worked for as a designer.
Yep.
And this relates to the software and the platforms that we used when we were building. Like, a lot of people were very much into, like, we all use Macs, right? But there was like this kind of like pushback from some of the guys we worked with that would say, oh, PCs are greater, PCs do this better, PCs, and it's like, whatever. My boss said, listen, I am loyal to the software because the software is what allows me to do my job, right? It's not the box that it's built, that the software exists in. Because if like Adobe just all of a sudden said, oh, we're going to be PC only, I was like, well, I'm not going to stay on Mac just because Mac is what I've always used, right? I'm going to go to PC because that allows me to do the job, right?
Yep.
So if TikTok deletes bans my account for whatever reason, I'm going to be upset about it because I love that platform. But it's not going to stop me from doing what I do, because I've hopefully built up my alliance with these people in other places, and they will follow through over there, wherever else I go.
I like the fact that you touched on something that you brought that up anyway, because I feel like it's all in what you do and how you use it, right? Yeah. I really do believe that. And to be honest with you, a lot of it does have some control, right? I don't think that people really understand there are controls to what you do or things that you do. I know it feels a little bit out of whack with that, with the TikTok aspect, but through Instagram and Facebook and these other platforms, you can block and move things around and kind of mold your view and your lens that you're looking at or that you want to see the way you need it to. And it doesn't become as much of a cesspool as what it can be. But what I always believe in is karma is when you put energy out and you put something out that's a positive realm or something that you're engaging with people and you are communicative and you're having this conversation, you're dialoguing, you're investing, all that stuff, people feel that. And I feel that the bad seeds aren't necessarily going to be around that. Like they'll be like, okay, you know what? All right, this isn't my cup of tea. It's a little too hands-on with me or whatever else. I'm out of here or whatever. Because if they want to be a troll, they can be a troll. They can do whatever they want to do. But it's just not really effective around me, because I usually either just shut it off and push it off to the side and keep moving forward in a positive space. But I always try to ask some of my guests that question around social media, because it's a wide range of opinions. Some people love it and just love playing in the space of it. And some people are absolutely 100% like, I just can't stand it. You know, and I always believe it's how you use it is really what makes a difference in social media.
Right. And I mean, I, like some other people like me, are very entrepreneurial. I'm trying to build a business.
Right.
And so 90% of what I'm doing on any of these social platforms is with the goal in mind of building more to my business. Now, that doesn't mean I'm, a robot and inhumane and not going to interact with human beings or only treat them as like, hey, you're my next dollar sign, right?
Right.
I'm trying to interact like that, but I'm going in like my plan is all related to how can I drive people over to my website to possibly buy the thing that I sell.
Yep.
And I'm very blatant about that. I don't try. I mean, and I'm not blatant like, hey, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff. But like, I don't ever try to skirt the issue or anything. It's like, hey, I make stuff, you can buy it, like that.
Right. So, but I think that's authentic, Dave. I think that's authentic. You're pretty much open. You're an open book. This is where I'm at. This is what I'm trying to do. You've had posts specifically that say, I'm looking to make money. I'm not looking to just this is I want this to be my full-time gig. This is my job. This is what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. This is how we make our money. And I think that's more authentic than, like you said, the sneaky kind of side way of doing things. So I think there's some authenticity to that.
Well, that's another thing I think is important is that authenticity is a trigger word that a lot of people use, but I've just never had an instinct to not be just who I am. Right. People see me on the street, they meet me in person, and they realize, wow, you're exactly like you are on video. And it was like, well, I mean, I might not be quite as gestural in person. You see my YouTube, and I'm like, and that's mostly for the camera a little bit. But I put a little bit more energy into that because in high school I took drama class, so I know a little bit about putting on a show.
Oh, nice,
right?
Well done.
Right, but it's mostly just that I just know that I'm here to. Part of it is a job. I'm trying to do a job of entertaining or informing or educating people into the thing. So I have a job to do. It's important that I fulfill that job, that obligation to the people viewing. Right.
No, that's
but
really cool.
You still run across. You see me on the street. You're still going to get the same guy.
Right.
So I don't know. It's just the way I've always lived, rather.
No, that's really great. I like that a lot. All right. So, we're coming up on almost an hour. So usually I was going to keep these things right around an hour time frame. I'm really appreciative of all your thoughts so far because I'm really interested in the whole art aspect of it. And I'm sure that listeners are, to be able to, especially to understand the concept of where you've kind of come from, what you've done, where you're at right now, and how you're playing in this social media space. If you've got to give advice to someone, Dave, this is one of the questions that I like to ask people. If you've got to give advice to somebody that may be starting off as a new podcaster, a new artist, somebody that's doing whatever or they're getting involved in social media or branding themselves or whatever else, because you're playing a lot like myself. We're playing in this space in a lot of different places. We're moving all these parts around to be able to do it. What's some advice that you would give to somebody that's just starting off right now?
Not much different than what I've already shared is I push back against fear, right?
Okay.
Push back against fear. Do the work, right? And that may seem really kind of like arbitrary in general, but really what it comes down to is like, hey, okay, you want to start a podcast? Okay, well then find out how that works. Go to YouTube and search how to start a podcast, right?
That's what I did. Yeah.
I mean, literally, like it's that simple. That's how I started, and it's so much easier now than even when I did it, right? And before I did it, the people that had to do podcasts like back in the early 2000s, like, man, that was arduous work to put up a podcast, and now it's like so easy, right? So figure out how that is. You want to start a Redbubble page, you want to start an Etsy page, you want to start making your own t-shirts, figure out how that's worked. Just go and do the research on that. And my computer keeps hold on, I'm trying to my screensaver keeps going on me, so I'm not looking at anybody. But so it's just a matter of like, if you're really serious about that thing, whatever it is, right? Figure out the steps. What do you like? I told something the other day. Like, what's your ultimate goal, right? And then reverse engineer that. Yeah. Reverse engineer it down to wherever you're at right now. Go to YouTube and search it. Go to Google and search it. Figure that out, and then take that first step. Right? Take the tiny little. Give yourself a timeline to execute, and then just go. And push back against these fears that you have about whatever it is that might be holding you back. Because when you push back against it, it's going to fade away every single time.
I love that. All right. So you just sparked something else on my mind. If you were to picture what your end goal is, you just said, picture what your end goal is. what you're trying to be able to accomplish, what you're trying to be able to do, and then work your way back. I love the concept of that because then you can kind of deconstruct it and move it back and be able to do it. If you were to pick your end goal, what is that for you, Dave? If you were to say, this is what I want to be able to do.
You know what? I want to be, honestly, I mean, if I was looking, pie in the sky idea, what I want to be is standing up on a stage, sharing this same idea with people without, coming across as some sort of like hype guru, not Tony Robbins style, but, just like, getting up on stage and preaching the gospel of like getting out and doing the work and putting some energy in and inspiring people to do that thing. Inspire it mass rather than, I like inspiring individuals. I like inspiring you, like inspiring other friends. But if I can inspire in mass, then that's great, right? And then to get paid to do that, I mean, come on, that would be awesome, right?
I know.
That'd be awesome.
I love it. I love that. Let's see. We got a couple questions that just came in here at the end. Yeah. I know that Girl Upcycle Studio asked, has either of your businesses changed drastically since quarantine? How about yours, Dave?
Honestly, I'm laughing because I've actually gotten more sales in the last month than I had in the previous month. Like I've got more work to do now than I did last month, which is, it's a good problem to have, but it may not always be that way. But the thing is that the purchase prices of the things are lower, right? Before, where it's like I'm selling larger, canvases and, bigger art or whatever. But now it's like I'm selling hats, I'm selling cans. So I've got more to do, but it's, smaller purchases. So that's probably the most consistent thing. So I'm making other choices. Behind the scenes to do things to allow people an opportunity to buy into stuff without having to spend a lot of money.
Yeah, so on my end, it's similar, very similar story. What I find is with people at home and they're working from home, they're listening to podcasts a lot more. So they're logging in and they're listening to my podcast. They're going in and buying merchandise. They're doing all kinds. So it's really interesting. The dynamic of that is it changed as people are at home. They're listening to things. They need some more positivity, things like that. So I've actually seen an uptick of downloads, of streams, of merchandise, and patrons of the show. So I'm appreciative of it, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm always humbled by all of it anyway, but I'm just like, wow, that's pretty great. So it both of us sounds like we've had an uptick in things that are happening with it. So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So Dave, if you were to look at just for the last couple of minutes here, where can people find you? Tell us where all the little spots they can go to find you and find some of your artwork and some of the stuff you are selling for some of the great stuff that you're doing.
Primary is my website, daveconrey.com. That's where I sell all my art and some of my design projects. And I keep meaning to put more and more stuff up. And just one of those things. If I wasn't now having to make all these hats, I'd have more stuff up there. But daveconrey.com for my stuff. You can always find me on 99% of social media platforms. You can find me as @DaveConrey, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and whatnot. The only one that's different is TikTok, which is Dave Makes Things. And that's only because I have an @DaveConrey on TikTok, but I had it back when it was what was it? What was TikTok before? It was like Musically, right?
Yeah.
And then I tried to log back into that when I first got back into TikTok, and I couldn't. I for some reason, I don't know what email address I had attached to it, but I can't get back into I couldn't get the password recovery, so I was like, So
mine's different as well. Mine has the Coffee Talk with Liquid Shano 1973. You can see at the top of the screen. Well, on TikTok, it's no 1973 because I was sharing the other day that when I would go into lives or I would talk to people, they'd try to read my name and it would be Liquid Shano 1973. And it was like this long drawn out thing. And I'm like, well, maybe in the brain, if it's shorter, it could be quicker. And it's worked out really well because now people can just kind of say it and it's out there and it's all good to go.
Yeah.
So good, man. Hey, listen, I really do appreciate you stopping into the podcast here, man. I'm hoping to have you on again down the road here. It's been great. I feel like I've gained a friend almost through this whole TikTok piece of it, through people that we have our community and people that support you. And every time I go live, they're popping into mine. And it's been a good little run, man. It's been a lot of fun. And I'm hoping that it can go further for both of us in our endeavors.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Okay, guys. Well, thanks for listening to the show. And as any of you know, if you want to become a patron of the show, I'll put the details right in the bottom. All the stuff that Dave was talking about here with his Instagram feed, Twitter feed, all the stuff I'm going to put right into the body of the podcast. So if you want to be able to click on any of the links, it'll take you right to his website and everything else. And yeah, man, thanks so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, man.